Welcome to More Than a Therapy Couch, the podcast where we go beyond the walls of traditional therapy sessions. I'm your host, Tiana. In a world that's constantly changing, so are the ways we navigate our mental and emotional health. We're here to embrace the notion that healing and growth extend far beyond the walls of a therapy room. Throughout this podcast, we'll be joined by a diverse array of experts and everyday individuals with compelling stories to help bring awareness to whatever you may be facing. We'll unpack the complexities of the human experience, tackle taboo topics, and challenge the stigmas surrounding mental health. So grab your emotional support water bottle, find a comfy spot, and join us as we embark on a journey that goes more than a therapy couch. Let the session begin. As a reminder, the topics discussed are for educational purposes only and are not meant to be taken as clinical advice. If you are concerned about you or a loved one's mental health, consult a mental health professional or call SAMHSA's 24-hour hotline at 1-800-662-HELP. Welcome back to More Than a Therapy Couch. We're here today with a trusted children's and adolescent therapist, Stephanie. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Would you be able to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a licensed professional counselor and I am an approved clinical supervisor. I work primarily with children and adolescents, and I've been in the field for nearly 15 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
I'm not old enough for that.
So was there anything in particular as to why you wanted to become a therapist?
I had a really interesting journey to becoming a counselor. I actually have my bachelor's degree in biochemistry. I had the intention of going to medical school, being a psychiatrist, and I quickly realized that that was not really how I wanted to work with clients. Mm-hmm. And I took some time to really consider what made the most sense for me as far as holistic approaches and working on clients with their strengths and the populations that I wanted to be working with. And I landed in the counseling field. I had a fantastic professor who really encouraged me to pursue not only the licensed professional counselor licensure, but also to continue studying for counselor education. And so I'm actually in the final phases of my PhD for counselor education.
Yes, we've talked about this before, and this has came up in conversation, and I feel like I'm always like, hey, how's that going? How is your, not proposal, what is it called?
Oh, I'm writing my dissertation
There
now,
we go.
And I'm nearly done, and I will be defending, hopefully in August, fingers crossed, everybody out there.
Very, very, very exciting.
It will be.
Worked very hard for it.
It's been a lot, and it's been very rewarding, and I'm really excited that I found myself where I have, and, life has kind of taken this route.
And what's one of your favorite things about being a therapist?
One of my favorite things about being a therapist is like when you see that aha moment for a client and you see everything start to click, like they're putting in all this work, you've been working with them for however long, and just all the pieces line up. And they're like those things that we've been talking about. Now it makes sense, and especially like with kids, it comes out differently because it's not necessarily that realization and that verbalization of, oh, I've done this thing differently and I'm applying these things that we've talked about. We're seeing the fruits of all the work that we've put in session and all the work that the families have put in outside of session. And it's like this more cohesive family environment, and everybody's just more calm and relaxed, and that's the goal.
And just making the whole family dynamic fit and kind of flow better, and not necessarily in the words flow better, but more so in a sense like, there have been times where there may be one, family member in particular who may be having a hard time with maybe school or, extracurriculars, whatever the case may be, and how they react to a lot of things ends up affecting the whole family. It can affect their siblings. It can affect, a lot of different things. And I think that's really important. And I do think that's really nice that we have to offer is that, we do work one-on-one with the children in the sessions, but also making sure that the parents and the families also have resources to help the child cope throughout the rest of the week.
Absolutely. And I think a really important piece of the work that I do is helping to empower parents and helping them feel more comfortable and competent in their own skills and helping them recognize that there's not a right or a wrong. There's not a normal. We just need to figure out what works best for your child and your family.
Absolutely. And that's pretty much it. There's no necessarily like, well, I need you to fix my child or I need you to fix this situation. It's like, no, like your child is acting this way because they feel a type of way about something, and let's get to the root of the problem. Let's figure that out. Let's not put a Band-Aid and say, oh, you're fine.
That's absolutely it. And kids can't communicate in the same ways that an adult can. And even adolescents aren't going to communicate the same way that an adult can. And so, a lot of the work that we're doing might not look like traditional therapy. It might not look like sitting on a couch together and having a conversation. And how do you feel about that? And, tell me your triggers and things like that. But it's helping kids make sense of their world through play, through creative means, and just tapping into, their mode of communication.
And tell me more about that. So with children, how does therapy work? How do you kind of incorporate that with children and helping them kind of process and change, certain maybe behaviors that they are kind of doing?
Sure. So one of the biggest things for me is that children are really working to find their place in the world and make sense of their world. And this, goes through from children into adolescence. And so I want to create a space where a child or an adolescent can come in and they can feel as if they're not being judged, and they can feel like they can explore and try out different things. And sometimes that looks like play, and sometimes that looks like drawing, and sometimes that looks like singing songs or telling a story. And no matter what it is, it's individual and it's focused on the needs of that particular client that I'm with, the needs of that particular family, and whatever their goals are that they'd like to be working on.
Yes, and I think that's a huge aspect of it is with children, depending on why they're even coming to counseling can depend on obviously your approach, what you guys talk about, what you're working on. And again, when you do meet with these children, you're meeting with them for 1 hour a week, and there's only so much that you're able to instill. And sometimes, the kids are really great, and sometimes they're not. They're like, I don't want to be here. And you have to do what works best for you, but also depending on the children's age, they also have to be receptive to it because from my understanding, you don't get anything done if the kid's like,
for sure. And that is part of that early groundwork when you start working with any new client, but particularly when you're working with a child or an adolescent, building that trust, building that comfort level, letting the kids know that they can come in and they are with an adult who they trust and can say whatever they need to say. And that's an adult who's going to help them reach their goals and help their family reach their goals. And if I have to go to the parents and say, hey, we talked about XYZ, knowing that I'm not doing that lightly, and just having that buy-in from the client and from the family.
Absolutely. And especially with children too, there's a lot of things where, hey, talking to the parent, hey, in session, so-and-so told me about this. Did that really happen? What are they talking about? They never said that. Or that never happened. We never did that. And sometimes, obviously working with kids, they can kind of say sometimes things that are just maybe not necessarily like what happened or what occurred. So it definitely does help, having that, like the parents involved. But also, more importantly, I would say, is making sure that the client also, depending on what age they are, you mentioned you work with adolescents too, that they know that when they are working with you, this is a safe space. And if there is, a particular situation or something along the lines of that where you're not ready to tell your parents or express those feelings, they should know and feel comfortable. Oh, well, Stephanie has my back. She understands me. I can trust that she's not going to, go and tell my parent. Now, please be advised, as long as
Right. As long as they are not a danger to themselves, they are not a danger to others. I am not hearing about abuse. These are things that I would have to report, that I would have to, check in with a parent about. A lot of things that teens will come with. So relationship issues, as long as these are not harmful relationship issues where, again, there's abuse, there's somebody harming somebody else, there's an adult involved in a relationship with a child. These are things that would be reportable.
Because sometimes certain parents, you talk to them on the phone, especially when we're booking the appointments, they don't necessarily understand. So I use this example and say, transparently, like if your 16-year-old daughter says that, they want to start transitioning and they want to go by him, he pronouns, the counselor could be like, okay, let's process that. Let's talk about that.
Right.
But they don't have to go and tell the parent because maybe they're not even ready. Maybe the client's still like, well, I don't really know. And maybe they don't want to go by he, him pronouns. Maybe they decide that they want to go by they, them, and they're, non-binary. And I think it's all about having that safe space and being able to figure out your own journey and being able to process all of those things.
And also being transparent with where the limits of confidentiality are. I'm not going to blindside a kid and be like, oh, yep, we have to talk about that. If something comes up in session, I'm like, okay, well, you're bringing this to my attention. This is something that we have to bring to your parents for XYZ reasons. How do you feel comfortable doing that? And coming up with a plan. And again, having that buy-in from the client.
Absolutely. Today's episode is brought to you by Tree of Life Counseling Center, where people come to heal, deal, and learn to thrive. They currently have immediate availability for talk therapy and medication management with a team of over 50 licensed clinicians. Are you feeling alone? We all can use someone to talk to. Call 732-393-8391 or visit us at www.treeoflifecc.org to start your journey of self-discovery and healing today. So while working with children, can you just tell me what are a lot of common themes that you've been seeing or that you've been noticing when they are coming to counseling?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest things I'm seeing is a lot of anxiety, and that can manifest in all different ways. I think social media really has contributed to a lot of the anxiety that kids experience in school and social spheres, and that spills over into family life. I'm also seeing some depression, behavioral issues. I do see OCD in kids on occasion, but I think if I had to choose the two biggest issues that come in for that people come into therapy for, I would say anxiety and behavioral issues.
And how does a parent recognize hey, maybe my kid needs to, come and talk to someone? Should a parent wait to the point where the kid's like, well, I don't want to go to school, I'm not going? Or key things that they can kind of notice or maybe pick up on prior to avoid it getting to that point where now you're trying to get yourself ready and you have work and now you have to get your kid ready and now your kid doesn't want to go to school and now it's a whole big thing where, again, it's disrupting the whole family dynamic. And not to say that what they are doing is making them ruin the family or whatever the case may be, is for some reason your kid doesn't feel heard, and we want to be able to process that so that the whole family can work together and move forward in a positive way.
Absolutely. I think it can be really challenging for a family to recognize that, maybe we do have to take this step, especially with younger children. I think the biggest thing we need to be looking at is how functioning is being impacted across different areas. So are we okay in one area and really struggling everywhere else? Is it vice versa? So if we're seeing a lot of struggles in a lot of different spaces, that's a time to seek some additional support. We want to do the best we can as parents, and there's also not a manual. So there's not a rule book that we can follow and be like, so I've done all of these things and now I have this perfectly happy, well-adjusted child.
Yep, they're perfect. They're ready to go out into the world.
It doesn't happen that way, unfortunately, because that rule book doesn't exist. Yeah. All kids are individuals. All families are individual. And so, as the grown-ups for these kids, we need to say, okay, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. Is this a pattern of behaviors? Is this something that's happened and then we've overcome it? Are there skills that you can implement on your own? Or again, do you need that additional support?
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with reaching out to get that additional support. If anything, you're helping, your child also feel like, hey, like my parents like really feel like, they want me to get that help. And
right.
And a lot of parents too, they will notice like, hey, my kid has been coming home from school and locking himself in the room every single night. I've tried to talk to him about like, hey, what's going on? And maybe they're not receptive. They don't want to talk to the parent, right. and they're resistant to that. So, another aspect of therapy is also being like, hey, right. you don't want to talk to me, but you got to talk to someone.
And having that adult in their life who is this third party who doesn't have the same level of intimacy as the whole family does and doesn't know the whole dynamic the way the family does and won't judge one person or the other. It's, it's about, okay, how do we come together as a family unit and what pieces does each person have to work on?
Absolutely. And you mentioned before, like if in the child's life, if they are struggling in different areas, so some examples of areas, what would those kind of look like?
So I think the two biggest that I see are school and home. With school, it can be a host of things. It can be academic underperformance. It can be behavioral issues in the classroom. It can be refusal to go to school. And at home, we can see a lot of defiance, just saying no to parents. And some of that, when we see issues at home and not at school, is a child working so hard during the day to keep it together and meet all these expectations. And then they come home to this safe space and they're like, I've lost it. I can't possibly hold on any more than I already have all day because it just took so much work, so much effort. And and that's concerning for parents because, of course, they don't want to be the punching bag for their children, but I always remind parents that, and grown-ups, trusted grown-ups in kids' lives, is that they can become that punching bag because their child trusts them and loves them and they know that that's a safe and secure relationship. And so we don't want that to be happening and we want to help come up with different skills so it doesn't happen, but it's also a sign that your relationship is very secure.
No, absolutely. And kind of going off that is, if your kid is coming to you, like as a parent, like you're human too. Like you also go through all of your struggles of, your boss and, maybe your partner, or maybe you even have other kids and family members, whatever the case may be. Yes, your kid coming to you in a sense is definitely good, but also like, hey, I can only take so much too, but also kind of saying like, hey, let's talk about that. Like, why are you kind of feeling that way? And parents aren't therapists, so you may not know what to exactly say. And there are a lot of parents where they're like, hey, I'm going to go to therapy so that I can better help my kid.
I love that because everybody's working on themselves and everybody's focused on the goal of, I need to improve me, and I also want to improve this family unit and the dynamic here. And I know that we all have a role in that.
Yeah, everyone has, I'm a firm believer of that. Everyone always has something that they can work on, somewhere where they can grow. You are, unfortunately, I hate to say it, you're not the perfect person. You may be pretty perfect at a lot of things or do really well at a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean, well, I'm good. Right. I don't need that.
Perfect doesn't exist.
And that's the thing. There's different types of therapy. Sometimes if your anxiety is really, really high, maybe you have to go every week. But if you're, especially with your child, it can be a lot on the parent's schedule and the child's schedule if they do a lot of extracurriculars. But finding out what is most important and kind of assessing that. So, if you're saying, well, my kid's really stressed out and, they haven't been doing well in school and they've been kind of acting out and really angry. Okay, well, what do you have them in? Are they in soccer? And music and band and in the play and all of these things and in, extra help for school, your kid's overwhelmed. No wonder they're stressed. They're only maybe 7, 8 years old.
Right.
And they can only take so much.
Right. And being able to listen to our kids when they're saying, you know what, this is kind of a limit for me. And again, they might not come out and say,
you have to ask,
this is a limit. They might start showing behavioral signs like we've been talking about. And then it's up to the parent and the grown-up to say, you know what? Maybe we need to shift something.
And maybe we need to assess. So we're going to take another commercial break. Feeling stuck mentally and physically? It may be time to supplement your self-care practices with some holistic healing options. Mind the Body Holistic Wellness in Freehold, New Jersey proudly offers a variety of healing modalities, including Reiki, massage therapy, reflexology, and Himalayan hot stone massages. For more information or to book an appointment, visit www.mindthebodyhw.com. Now back to our show. Your experience, have you seen that some parents have been really resistant to their child being in therapy? Or just resistant to the topic of therapy or the idea?
I think that's a really great question. I think, as we move forward, we're seeing a lot more children, younger and younger, presenting in therapy. And I think that's a direct correlation with parents' awareness of their own mental health and how mental health impacts just on the day-to-day. And I also, want to give voice to the parents who maybe feel that therapy can be stigmatizing to their young children. Maybe we're pathologizing things that don't need to be pathologized. And my answer to that is the best bet is to give it a shot. See if you feel like your kid needs some extra support, your family needs some extra support. There's no shame in that. We all need help sometimes. And finding the right therapist who you connect with, who your child connects with, that's the magic. That's where all the big change happens and where everybody can just feel empowered and comfortable and safe to explore and learn and grow.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of parents, children, they also don't know where to start. They don't know where to begin. And I think that whole process of first recognizing, hey, maybe my family, should go to some counseling. Maybe we should go and talk, to some people. And I think a lot of times too, and I know especially with us, especially with the children, it can be very hard to get an appointment right now.
Sure.
And I know one thing that we actually offer is sometimes just because your child needs therapy, like we were saying before, you may benefit from therapy and your family may benefit from therapy. So even if your child's on the wait list, if you're able to start and get an appointment, you're still getting the resources of things that you can then implement to help you help your child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because change is not, like we said before, just happening in that 150-minute session with, your small child. Change is happening all through the week, all the skills that everybody else is implementing in the house, all the adjustments we're making. And so by one person coming in, we can really see some positive changes.
So we're just getting to the end of the episode, and there is one question that we do like to ask all of our guest speakers.
Fantastic.
And that question is, if you were stuck on an island, what would be the one item that you would bring with you?
Oh, dang, you didn't even let me prepare for that one.
No, it was a I want your response on the spot.
So my logical brain is saying bottled water because you can't survive without water. But my brain of what I would actually like to be doing on an island, a book.
A book?
I just love to read. I mean, if I could bring my Peloton, that would come too. But I probably can't bring that to an island.
Is there a specific book that you would bring?
Ooh, this is very hard. Possibly Jane Eyre, because I'm really into the classics. But I'm also in my thriller era right now.
What are you reading right now?
Ooh, I am reading, but it's not even a thriller. I'm saying I'm in my thriller era, and you ask me what I'm reading. I am reading The Midnight Library.
How is that?
Fine. It actually deals with mental health.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, it was very nice having you on our episode, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.